Hi everyone, this is U.S. immigration lawyer Michael Ashoori, and in today's video I'm going to answer the question, what documents are needed for a fiancé visa? This is a question that comes up with our fiancé visa clients. They want to know what documents need to be submitted with their case, so I wanted to make this video to help answer that question. As a general overview, the K-1 visa is a visa that allows a U.S. citizen to apply for a visa for their fiancé that's outside of the United States to come to the United States. So once the fiancé enters the United States, the couple can get married and the fiancé can apply for their green card without needing to leave. It's a wonderful option for people that qualify, but there's a lot of documents that are involved in the process. So in this particular video, I want to talk about what those documents are. As a general disclaimer, this is not a complete list of every single document you need. This is just a general overview for you to get a sense of some of the documents that are going to be required for your case. So that's just one of the disclaimers that I want to mention. Also the particular documents that are going to be needed for your case will depend on the specific circumstances of your case. So if you'd like, at the end of this video, I'm going to show you how you can contact me if you have any questions at all about the specifics of your case. But this is just more of a general overview. And with that, let's dive right in. First document that's needed is the Form I-129F. This is the application that gets filed with USCIS in order to apply for a fiancé visa. It's the form. It's basically the application. It's necessary. It must be filed by the U.S. citizen to USCIS. And along with this form, you include a lot of documentation that we're going to discuss now. But that's the first thing that you should know about. It's the Form I-129F. You're going to also need to submit an unexpired copy, a copy of the unexpired passport of the U.S. citizen petitioner. The reason that you submit this is because the fiancé visa, the K-1 visa, requires that the person filing the petition, the person in the U.S., be a U.S. citizen. So you submit the copy of the passport of the U.S. citizen petitioner to prove that they are in fact a U.S. citizen. So another document that you're going to include is any divorce decrees. So if either you or your fiance were previously married, and you need to demonstrate that the marriage is terminated. And so one of the ways that you would do this is through a divorce decree. Again, this is only if you've been previously married, but this is just one of those things that you should be aware of, because in order to qualify for a K-1 visa, both parties must be free to marry. And what that means is that if anybody has previously been married, that their marriage is now terminated. And the way that you prove that, most of the time or a lot of the time, is with a divorce decree. So that's just something to be aware of. Okay, another document that you should be aware of is signed statements from the U.S. citizen petitioner and the foreign fiancé. So what this is basically you and your fiancé prepare signed statements. Your attorney will help you with what you need to include in the signed statements. But basically, you talk about your story, about how you met your fiancé. Again, you want to make sure that this is done properly. So if you have any questions about this, feel free to contact me and I'd be happy to guide you through it. But the idea behind the signed statement is to show, to prove a lot of things. So as many of you may know, one of the requirements for the fiancé visa is that you must intend to marry each other within 90 days of the fiancé coming to the United States. So in the signed statement, you can demonstrate your intent to marry each other. You can say that, yes, I intend to marry my fiancé within 90 days of coming to the United States. However you go about explaining and demonstrating that intent, that's one purpose of the letter. Another purpose of the signed statement is to show that you've met each other within the last 2 years. Another requirement for the fiancé visa is that you must have physically met each other within the last 2 years. The signed statement is part of the evidence that you can include to explain that you have actually in fact met each other. But the signed statement is very important. It helps you explain a lot of the important factors of the fiancé visa case. So it's just something to know about. You should ideally have signed statements from the US citizen and the foreign fiancé. Another document that you should be aware of is photos of you and your fiancé together. The photos are helpful to demonstrate that you are actually, a real couple and that you've met each other in person. So the photos are very helpful to the application, and just something to be aware of. Another document that you should know about are flight tickets, itinerary, and passport stamps showing travel. Specifically, this evidence is helpful to show that you and your fiancé have met in person. So ideally, if one of the parties is, for example, residing in the UK, if the US citizen has travel, flight tickets and an itinerary and passport stamps showing travel to the UK, it's helpful evidence to show that you've physically met each other. Of course, the photos go a long way in showing the physical meeting, but the flight information is also very helpful to show that you've actually met each other in person. So yeah, it's good to know about that. Okay, another helpful form of documentation is phone call logs, text message threads, and copies of letters that you've exchanged between you and your fiancé. If you're showing that you've been sending letters back and forth to each other, and that you're constantly texting each other, or that you're texting each other regularly, or that you're having FaceTime calls, or you have calls with each other on the phone regularly, this is also very helpful to demonstrate that you are in fact in a real relationship. You're actually engaged with one another. You're in a real relationship. It's not, it's not something fake. It's the phone calls, text messages, and the letters help to show that. So that's another thing to be aware of. Now, another helpful form of documentation is letters, signed statements from friends and family. And basically what signed statements from friends and family help to do is they also, so it's one thing for you to write letters and write signed statements about your intent to get married and about your relationship with your fiancé. That's certainly helpful, but another very helpful form of documentation is if other people that know both of you, that know both you and your fiancé, are also talking about your relationship and giving their thoughts on your relationship with your fiancé, attesting to the fact that you are in fact in a real relationship, that you have met each other, that you love each other, that you intend to get married to one another. When it's coming from a third party, like a friend or a family member, it's very helpful as well. So signed statements from friends and family are also a helpful form of documentation. Okay, so now one thing that I want to talk to you about is regarding certain cases. As many of you may know, that as we've discussed, there's a requirement that you meet each other, that you and your fiancé met each other in person within the last 2 years. Some people may be eligible to qualify for an exception to that requirement. So there's 2 exceptions for people that are unable to physically meet their fiancé within the last 2 years. Okay. If you fall within one of those exceptions, and I'll discuss those exceptions in a minute, then you can still qualify for a K-1 visa even though you did not meet your fiancé in person. And now the reason why I've included this information here is that if you plan to rely on one of these exceptions, then you should be planning to include additional evidence with your documents for the fiancé visa, showing that you fall into one of these exceptions that allows you to avoid having met each other in person. So let's kind of discuss that now. So the 2 requirements are, the 2 exceptions to the physical meeting requirement are, one is the extreme hardship exception, That means like if there would be some sort of an extreme hardship. For example, if one of the parties has medical issues which prevent them from seeing the other party, or perhaps there is some sort of political tension in the country that the fiance is in that makes traveling and meeting each other very difficult, or if there's some sort of circumstances like that, then you can potentially qualify for the extreme hardship exception to prove that you don't need to actually physically see each other to qualify for the fiancé visa. Another exception to the physical meeting requirements is the established custom exception. The established custom exception is basically that you show that there's a long-standing custom or religious practice that you abide by that prevents you and your spouse from seeing each other. For example, if you belong to a particular religion that prevents the engaged couple from meeting in person before the marriage takes place, and you're a part of that religion that follows that tradition or that observance, then you may be exempt from having to physically meet your fiancé in person. So again, the two exceptions are the extreme hardship exception and the established custom exception. And if you plan on relying on either of these exceptions, you should be ready and prepared to present evidence that you satisfy either of these exceptions. Now, here are some examples of some documents that you can include to show that you fall within one of these exceptions. One is letters from religious authorities. So, for example, if you are within a religion that doesn't allow the fiancés to meet in person before getting married, you should provide a letter from a religious authority figure, for example, a priest or a rabbi or an imam that basically attests to the fact that this is a real observance that's practiced in the religion. So that's one particular piece of evidence that you may want to include. So for the extreme hardship exception, news articles. If there are political tensions in the country that that the fiancé is living in, news articles would be a helpful way to prove that those tensions are actually existing. Medical records. So if you're relying on the extreme hardship exception, there's an extreme hardship in visiting each other and seeing each other in person because one party has medical issues that prevent each other from seeing each other, then you can include medical records to prove that the medical condition and the extreme hardship actually exists. So, I know that was a ton of documentation that we went through pretty quickly. I hope you guys found the video very helpful. If you did, please go ahead and like and subscribe. We're constantly posting U.S. immigration content, and by subscribing to the channel, it's the best way to stay in the loop on all the videos that we're posting. By liking the video, you really help us in terms of our videos. It really is helpful for us. If you have any questions whatsoever, I've included my contact information in the description below. You can find my email and my phone number. And I've also included a special link where you can schedule a free consultation with my office. If you have any questions at all, feel free to schedule a consultation. We'd be happy to discuss with you. As always, thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you on the next video.